Hi friends, and thanks for stopping by my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my February monthly wrap up. It is end of March, but better late than never. And without further ado, I'm going to get right into the video. So the month of February, it was a very solid month. I read a total of 7 books along with about 2,816 pages. And on top of that, I saved around $78. I'll have the exact number and cost breakdown kind of like on the side somewhere. And for the whole month, my average star rating was 3.91, which is pretty solid if I do have to say so myself, with 2 5-star books. However, one book in particular brought down the rating so dramatically, in my opinion. Otherwise, I think the score for the month would have been between 4 and 5 instead of like 3.9. And honestly, I think the score that I gave it is kind of generous. But yeah, you'll hear more about that in a second. So first, before I get into all the books that I read, I'm going to show you guys the statistics that I saved throughout the whole month. And as you can see on either my left or my right, I have no idea where I'm going to put it. It is my monthly graph of how many pages I read per day for the month of February. And as you can see, I started off the month super strong. I finished The Seventh Husband of Evelyn Hugo. I binged it all in one day. And then for about a third of the month, you can see that I really trailed off on reading. It's mainly because I read 2 very serious literary books about like society as it is today. And every time I read it, it's either really depressing stuff, it really makes you face reality, or it gave me food for thought, so I had to really sit back and read and digest it. So my reading really slumped down during the period where I was reading the 2 particular book. I believe it is Not That Bad and White Tears, Brown Scars. And then you can see at the end of the month, I actually read a bunch of books, and it's all thanks to Miss Ali Hazelwood for her novel Bride. And after reading that book, I was in a romantasy vibe, so I picked up 2 more romance books and started a 3rd romance book. So you can see that in one of the days, basically within 24 hours, I binged an entire series. As for how I consume my books, as you can see, 43% of it were via audiobooks, and the rest of it, 57%, were via ebooks. I know that I have the physical copy of Bride right here, but I'm sure you'll eventually come to find out that even though I have the physical book, a lot of the time I prefer the ebook format just because of the portability and that I could just bring it anywhere and allow me to read it on the go. So the last piece of statistics that I have for you guys is how I got my books. So 14% of my books this month came from the library, such as Libby app, Hoopla app, or at my local library. And another 14% of it came from either the Spotify premium subscription, now comes with about 10 hours of audiobooks, and or Stuff Your Kindle Day. I don't believe I actually read anything from Stuff Your Kindle Day this month, but I do group it in the same category since they're like miscellaneous acquisitions.
Editing Mimi here. So I realized that I actually have a lot more graphs and data to show you guys. So on the screen, I'm just gonna paste all of them here so you guys can have a good idea about the books I've read and what kind of data I record throughout the month.
So without any further ado, let's talk about the books that I consumed this month. The very first book being The Seventh Husband of Evelyn Hugo. I actually listened to it as an audiobook. I gave this book a 4-star rating. Personally for me, I really like the character of Evelyn Hugo. I think it is an extremely well-written character with flaws and character growth. And the slight plot twist at the end with the writer was just phenomenal. Like, I did not see that one coming. Though I gave it a 4-star because it took some time for me to ramp up and really enjoy it. Again, it's kind of like a biased rating since this is not typically the kind of book I would read, but still, I do think it is a solid book, and that's why I gave it a 4-star. It really took some time for me to get into it. That's why you saw me binge basically like half of it in one day. The next book I read for the month is White Tears, Brown Scars. I gave this book a 4-star rating. Personally, for me, I thought this book was really thought-provoking. It talked about today's society with how we deal with race and sexism in our community and in our culture and in our workforce. I thought the historical repetition was kind of interesting and relevant, but this story kind of falls short. Sorry, not story, but this piece kind of falls short for me because at the end, it didn't feel like there was a big wrap up to the story. It kind of gave us a lot of information for us to digest and a lot of thought provoking things. But I wish there was more clarity in the ending. I felt like in the ending, there was a lot of redundancy in the actual book itself, and the book itself was very hard for me to digest. So the repetition and the redundancy kind of made it fall off the scale a little bit for me. But I do think it was an interesting read. Definitely gave me more insight on how the history can shape our current future, or how some people view history and its repetition through time. The next book I read, and it is my 5-star read. I did not expect to enjoy this book so much. I heard a lot of things about it, and to be honest, I thought it was overhyped. I genuinely thought that. But the next book I read was I'm Glad My Mother Died, and I gave it 5-star because Jeanette McCurdy deserves the world. Like that, I would be listening to the audiobook and I was livid at points, and then I was really sad at some points. But the way she wrote the story and the way she told it, because I listened to it via audiobook and Jeanette herself was the narrator for the audiobook, it just gave like a much more personal feel to it. And so it's just so sad. It's genuinely such a sad book, but the way she wrote it, she didn't want us to feel bad for her almost. Solid 5-star read. I do recommend it, even though I'm not like a memoir autobiography kind of person, but that one really just spectacular. So the next book that I read, or rather listened to, was Not That Bad. I'm not going to rate this one since it's a very sensitive topic and it tells stories of individual people. I do recommend listening to it since the authors of the individual stories are the one narrating it for the most part. And I found a lot of the stories to be thought-provoking. The 3 stories that really stood out to me were the one about how law student or law classes viewed the victims and what they're supposed to do to the victims. So like they're training the lawyers or people who are going to become lawyers to view the victims in a certain light, or how the community will protect a predator simply because they are an outstanding member of the community, and they don't want that shame to drag down the community as a whole because that person is a representative of the community. And lastly, how news outlets and reporters view the victims, and they view them as more of objects, something to kind of make the headlines. It was really depressing, I'll tell you that much. I would only read it or listen to it if you're in the right state of mind. Otherwise, it can get really depressing. And with those 2 kind of harder topics books read, I decided to do something more fun this month and picked up Bride by Miss Ali Hazelwood. So for those who don't know, I really enjoy Ali Hazelwood's books. I think something about them just scratch my brain the right way. Like just the way she writes is just exactly how I want my romances to be. I would say it's very cut and paste. It's very formulaic, but I enjoy that. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing a full review of all of Ali Hazelwood's books since I did finish all of them. But basically, this is her debut novel to paranormal romance, and I would say that I gave this book 4 stars. I felt that it was lacking in world building. It's basically set in the human worlds, but add vampires and werewolves to the mix. The one thing that a lot of people are very distraught, I don't think distraught is the right word, very shocked, I think that's the best word, shocked about, is the nodding in this book and the Alpha Omega universe. I think I mentioned this in my newbie tag. I am a fanfiction girly, so this whole book just basically scratched the surface of what everything is. I do have to say, I wouldn't call this an Alpha Beta Omega verse book. There's really no ABO sense to it, except for the fact that he's an alpha, but the alpha in this universe is just like the lead of the pack in a very literal sense. But anyways, I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed their interactions, their bantering, and kind of like his protectiveness over her. What I do not like is the fact that Misery is a hacker or a cybersecurity engineer, and I, as someone who is a developer, I had to put the book down multiple times simply because it was just so unrealistic, and that really took away from the book for me. What really ruined the book for me was how he literally fights her throws her insecurity and was like, oh yeah, we're just having a good time. I'm actually not interested in you and you're not my mate. So peace. And then we have the climax of the book. And then he doesn't apologize. So yeah, let's just get on to the next book. The next book I read was Love on the Brain, and I gave it a solid 2 stars. I think 2 stars is like really high. I think it should be 1 star or 0 star. I don't even remember. Okay, I do remember what happens in the book, and I remember that it could be 100 pages shorter. You can cut out everything about Twitter, anything related to Twitter. If you cut all that out, the book will be the exact same book. There was no reason for the Twitter thing to be in there. And then at the end, it just went 0 to 100 really quick because she found out who hacked her Twitter, okay? And then she did her investigative snooping, and the guy who hacked her Twitter suddenly came like, I am the big bad wolf. What is it? What's that Scooby-Doo meme where he comes in and it's like, I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids.
I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you meddling kids.
Because the man literally comes in, he wanted to take control of the project, and the only way he could figure out how to do that was to sabotage the project. It ended up with him pulling a gun on her. I don't know. Yeah, that itself was already really, really wild. But we're not gonna even talk about her character. Yeah, so 2 star is a very nice rating, I would say. So yeah, we have that one. So for the last book of February was King of Pride, and again, another 5 star. And oh my god, Kai Young is the official billionaire book boyfriend. BBB, because he is a gentleman through and through. I do not care. I will not listen to anything you will say. That aside, I really liked the dynamic between Isabella and Kai. I really like that they're opposites attracts, and he is just a gentleman. He's pushing her to pursue her passion, which is in writing, even though she works as I believe a bartender on and off. The only thing I didn't really like about the book is somehow Isabella also turned out to be a millionaire, which kind of just eh like, I thought the story would be a lot more interesting if she would have just, been a regular girl working jobs to make ends meet and then pursuing her career. It felt more relatable like that. But instead, we get the whole climax of him trying to win back his CEO seat, and that was the climax of the story. It really should have been like how he and Isabella face his mom and get their approval, to be honest. But I don't care. It's such a minor thing. It's such a short point of the book that I'm willing to overlook it. I know it's a little bit weird that she just turns out to be like, oh yeah, she's an heiress to like a hotel chain empire or something like that. So, it's whatever, I guess. And with that, we finished up my February monthly wrap up. Did you guys notice that I hate read Love on the Brain? Literally finished it in 24 hours. I was like, it cannot be this bad. There's no way. Ali Hazelwood has not done me wrong, and she did me wrong. But let me know what your thoughts are on any of these books if you have read them. I personally thought this was a very, very good month for me. I read a lot of good books and gave 2 solid 5 stars, which I don't think I have since I started reading again. So that was surprising. And yeah, I think that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And I hope you guys have an amazing, wonderful day. Goodbye.